first off, how did you get involved in MMA? How did that, go from wrestling to doing MMA now?
I used to watch the fights, even when I was wrestling. And we were in Stillwater, UFC 100. We were at Scott Dade's house, and I was like, man, I think I want to fight. I wasn't doing anything. And I called Dwayne Zinkin, who's my manager now, and told him I'd like to try it. And he got me a plane ticket out to San Jose. I went and messed around in there. I got so tired. I couldn't even go. I was just wrestling. I was just going in there to wrestle Cain Velasquez, and I'd get so tired. He was punching me, kicking me out. I was getting so tired, and I was like, you know what? I kind of like it, and went a couple other places, came back home, and decided I was going to do it. Met Scott Coker, the guy that CEO of Strikeforce, on July 31st, 2009, I think. And he said, yeah, we'll give him a chance. And I went to California in August and fought in September. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was so scared, man. It was bad. But, I was out there fighting, and the guy started trying to wrestle me. So he always ended up underneath, and that helped me out a lot.
Well, what's the biggest difference between wrestling and MMA?
Getting punched.
Getting punched?
Yeah. I kind of let my ego get ahead of me a little bit too, because when I started fighting, I would train with Cain. He was one of the best guys in the world, and I would tell the coaches to just let him go hard on me, and I got a broken nose for that one. I got kicked right in the face, and then I realized that it was probably best for me to take my time. But striking was the hardest. Getting punched was pretty hard to deal with at first, but once you get past it, it helps.
Do you think it helped going up against him when you first got into it? Because obviously 10-0, in competition so far. Do you think, getting beat up like that early on really helped you?
Yeah, it was him and everybody else though. All I could do was wrestle, and then when I would take him down, I would get submitted. So there was really no winning except for Tuesday, which is wrestling day. It was tough, man. You go from being a guy that was on every world team from 2003 to 2008, national champion every year, to being basically the bottom of the totem pole, and it was tough, but it helped, man, because when I go into the fights after the training that I get, it's easy because these guys aren't the people that I'm training with on a daily basis, and the guys I train with are the best in the world. Cain was the heavyweight champion of the world, Luke Rockhold's the Strikeforce middleweight champion, and so on and so forth. I get the best training, and it was difficult, but it's helped. It's helped a ton.
Yeah. Now getting to wrestle down in Oklahoma, or compete down in Oklahoma City in a month, what is that going to be like? Getting to kind of come home in a way to where you spent a few years here in college and whatnot. Yeah,
it feels great. Whenever the guy called me and told me that it was going to be Oklahoma City, I had to actually sit down for a second and kind of process it, because I hadn't been here in 2 years, and just to be able to compete in Oklahoma is special to me. I lived there for 10 years after college. I didn't leave. This is a special place, and you have everything in here. Look at this wrestling room, the level of the talent in this wrestling room, and the coaches. So I lived here for a long time. I still own a house here. So it's special, and I think that the people that were there when I decided I wanted to do it and laughed at me and called me Kung Fu Panda, they're going to get to see me now as a high-level mixed martial arts fighter, and it means a lot, man. It's the hard work is starting to pay off, and it's good.
Speaking of the OSU coaches, did any of them kind of work with you when you made that transition to MMA, or with it being different from wrestling, you had to go with a different route? My lessons were
learned in here, man. When I decided to fight, that was going to be a journey that I had to take alone, because it's so far from what we do here. This is wrestling, and when you're in this place, you focus on wrestling. And when I went off, I still had the support of everyone in this room and my friends, but it was my journey, so I have new coaches, and they helped me. But the basis and the foundation was built in this room, or in we had a big old barn back when I was in college. before we moved in here, we wrestled in the barn, but the foundation was built here. I learned to work here. I learned to commit myself, and so in a way, you know, I'm still taking that with everybody with me, because at every turn I call back on my experiences at Oklahoma State and being a part of Oklahoma State wrestling to help me as I move forward in my career.
You talked about learning in your training, in with Strikeforce now, but I guess you never stop learning. And you talked about how you call in your wrestling skills when you're fighting. So, what else did you learn when you here at Oklahoma State, in that Oklahoma State of mind? That's got you there?
Oh, it's a mentality of winning, and that's what they do here, man. I mean, you guys have been around. It's no there's no alternative. You want to win, and people always talk about, oh man, you just know how to compete. Well, yeah, I know how to compete, because if I didn't learn how to compete, I didn't want to walk off that mat, because I knew it was waiting for me in the back. So you learn to win, man. You learn to train. You learn to compete, and it's surprising to a lot of people the things that I do, and how I took Josh Barnett and beat him for 5 rounds, and this guy was a UFC champion, and Bigfoot Silva, he's 6'4", looks like Stonehenge. You know what Stonehenge is?
Oh, yeah.
That's how his face is, and he broke my hand too. Look at that, he broke my hand. But it doesn't surprise me. I know how to compete. I compete at the highest levels. Wrestling here, wrestling in the Olympic Games, and it's no surprise to me. I know how to compete.
You mentioned that you still had the support when you left wrestling and moved on. Were you talking about specifically you still had Coach John Smith's support? And
everyone was supportive. John, he hasn't always been the biggest component of MMA. We lost a couple guys that probably should have been wrestling. Hendricks and Rochelle, they stopped a little early. So when stuff like that starts to happen, it kind of forms a bad taste. But with me, my wrestling career was done. I wrestled 8 years past college and had a great career. And we walked outside of Gallagher when I told him, I said, I think I'm going to go to California and start fighting. And he said, you're going to be good at it. That's all he said. Yeah, I always fight. I fought in the wrestling room all the time. So I fought Eric Guerrero when I was trying to make weight all the time. I got plenty of fights. So Eric, I talked to a little more than John, but I stayed in contact with those guys as much as I can. I'm really busy, as they are, trying to run the best program in the country, but I'm just real busy.
You talked about being back in this room. You haven't been here in a long time. What kind of feelings came over you when you walked in and saw some of the new stuff that's been on the wall?
Well, the first thing I thought was, where's Coleman Scott with that bronze medal? Because I want a match. That's what I was thinking. I want to beat Coleman Scott. He's the man now. Is he in here? Is he?
Yeah.
Is he up?
Please. Is he looking at me?
All right.
Just tell me, is he looking at me?
Yeah.
I'm scared. I thought he wasn't here. It's kind of calling him out whenever he wasn't around. This guy's Olympic bronze medalist. What am I going to do?
Well, you see all these guys who are in the program right here, just kind of watching you, looking up at you. With all the success you've had, what would be some advice that you'd give the guys that are in the program right now?
Just listen, man. Listen to Coach Smith. Listen to Eric, Kenny Monday, Coleman. These guys all learn from experience. They've all experienced it. You can't. It's very hard, and that's where, for me in MMA, it's hard for me to listen to people that. It's hard because I'm from a program where the people that are teaching you have done it and done it at the highest level. So it took some time to adjust. So it's easy here. You listen, you'll have success. The levels of success will differ. Not everybody's going to be a 4-time NCAA champion. You may not even be an All-American, but you'll have success. And then when you leave here, you'll be prepared to live life and carry yourself in a way that you can feel good about. It's not in the cards for everyone, but just listen and it'll be all right.
How do you feel going into the fight?
When are we going to talk about fighting? You guys are like, interview's over. Yeah, come on, man, I'm fighting Frank Mir. It's cool. Cool stuff. No, I feel good, man. I've trained hard. Now I've got some skills, so I don't have to feel like I did before. Like, man, what if I'm in over my head, with this dude? I've got some good skills now. I can kick, I can punch. I do some crazy stuff, too. I'm going to pull it out when I get to Oklahoma City. But, yeah, I mean, I feel good. I got a lot of time still. 7 weeks of training and 8 weeks to the fight before we fight. But I catch myself sometimes because when I fought Josh Barnett, you know, when I was at Oklahoma State, there was an apartment building right here. It was a one bed. I lived in a 1-bedroom studio. The bed came out of the walls. $325, all bills paid. Trust me, it's nice. That's nice compared to what I live in San Jose. You know, it's expensive there. But I played UFC. I used to play the first UFC game. Josh Barnett was on the cover. So I was in the cage first, and he walked in. I was like, dang, I'm really about to fight Josh Barnett. Whistle blew. I bam, right in the face. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm going to kick in the face.
Did you remember any cheats from the game?
Yeah, I was like trying to get angles. I knew he was slow.
You said you're going to do some crazy stuff. Can you preview that for us?
Only if I get to do it to him.
Why me?
No, I don't know. He just kind of got in my eyes. No, I'm not doing it to him. Her. Yep. Her.
Careful.
Say no. Huh? Sorry, dude. Can't do it.
Well, speaking of the fight, I mean, would you say this is probably your biggest one to date?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a 2-time UFC champion. You know, I mean, Josh Barnett was a 1-time champion. So he's a 2-time UFC champion. So my career is going in levels. You know, like it's progressed the way it's supposed to. You know, I fought guys that didn't have any fights to guys with 5 fights and 10 fights. And then now, you know, I'm fighting guys that were champions before. So it's the toughest one on paper. You know, but in terms of how the fight's going to play out, it's going to be up to how I train and how I fight.
Speaking of training, how do you approach this with it being, you know, your toughest match?
I think it makes it easier. I mean, because you know that you have to push it every day in the gym or he's going to break your arm. I mean, he just broke Nogueira's arm just recently, you know, and he broke Tim Sylvia's arm and then, you know, tries to break your arm, dude. So I've got to prepare right, you know, and be ready to fight in all positions.
Do you find yourself leaning towards some old tricks you learned here on the mat? Yeah, clear that out of your head sometimes?
I always do.
Yeah.
You know, I always do. You know, I was fighting Josh, and I wasn't supposed to take him down. But got a little tough in the stand-up. I'm a wrestler. What do? Take him down. You know, it happens from street fights all the way up to MMA and pro, you know. And I bet boxers would try to take people down if they could. You know, it's just illegal. What's up, guys? This is Daniel Cormier. I'm fighting November 3rd at Chesapeake Arena against Frank Mir. Be there.